Welcome to HFY Galactic Audiobooks, where humanity stands at the forefront of the cosmos. Dive into a universe of captivating alien encounters, bold adventures, and the unbreakable spirit of humankind. In this corner of the galaxy, we share thrilling tales where humanity's strength, resilience, and wit light up the darkest corners of space. Whether you're a believer in the unknown or just love a good story, you're in the right place. Let the stars guide you, and prepare for an unforgettable journey through space. What will you discover next? Subscribe and let your imagination soar. In the vast, mechanical heart of Proxima Station, the winds outside howled against the reinforced glass of the docking bay, carrying fine red scent from the desert planet Proxima 7. It felt like a constant battle between the elements and the structure, as if the planet itself refused to be tamed. The station stood tall, an epitome of high-tech engineering in the midst of a hostile environment, with its sleek metallic surfaces reflecting the harsh light of distant stars. The camera slowly pans over the scene, revealing Commander Marcus Hill, his muscular arms exposed by his sleeveless black armor, standing perfectly still at attention. The armor, dense enough to halt most conventional weaponry, yet flexible enough for swift movements, clung to his form like a second skin. The wind whipped at his blonde hair, tooling it, but his icy blue eyes remained fixed, narrowed in focus as he watched the ship's descent. He could hear the mechanical hum of the docking bay's systems and feel the tension in the air. A sense of anticipation rippled through the air as the ship's ramp descended with dramatic slowness. The once quiet space was filled with the subtle sounds of whirring engines and hissing airlocks. The ramp's movement seemed almost theatrical, every second stretching into infinity as if the very arrival of the ship was meant to announce something important, a statement to the galaxy that something momentous was about to happen. And, as the ship's ramp finally touched down with a sharp metallic clank, Commander Hill couldn't shake the feeling that the arrival of this particular passenger would be anything but ordinary. Beside him, Lieutenant Parker shifted uncomfortably, breaking the silence. "Lieutenant Parker, quite the entrance." Marcus grunted, his steely gaze never leaving the descending ramp. "Marcus Hill, the Kvari are always dramatic." The words were barely audible above the soft mechanical noises, but the weight of them hung in the air. As the door to the ship opened, a gust of sweet-smelling incense wafted into the bay, its exotic scent nearly overpowering in its intensity. From within the ship emerged Lady Alara Kvari, tall, regal, her fiery red skin gleaming under the harsh lights of the docking bay. Her movements were fluid, controlled, with an elegance that belied the power she radiated. Her golden eyes scanned the room with a look of utter disdain, as though she were a queen surveying her court. A procession of servants followed her, carrying elaborately decorated containers that seemed to hold more than just personal belongings, each piece of luggage an extension of her status, a testament to her wealth and importance. She wore a form-fitting black ensemble, tight and revealing, with cutouts that exposed flashes of crimson skin. The outfit felt more suited to the lights of a high-end nightclub than to the sterile halls of a diplomatic station. Marcus watched her approach, the unsettling feeling growing stronger. His internal voice couldn't help but remark, "Marcus Hill, internal monologue, she's a walking storm." Lady Alara's gaze locked onto him, and without a hint of warmth, she spoke. "Lady Alara Kvari," disdainfully, "I expected someone more impressive to greet me." Her tone was sharp, carrying the weight of 1,000 expectations, and Marcus could sense the challenge in her words, the tension beginning to rise in the air between them. His response was calm, unyielding. "Marcus Hill, welcome to Proxima Station, Lady Kvari. I'm Commander Marcus Hill, head of security." As she drew closer, the air seemed to crackle with an electric tension. She moved with predatory grace, inspecting him closely, measuring him like a hawk surveying its prey. "Lady Alara Kvari, a human? How quaint. I thought they'd send someone more fitting for my stature." Her words were a venomous whisper, her gaze lingering on his exposed arms as if his very presence was beneath her. Despite her arrogance, Marcus held his ground. "Marcus Hill, I assure you, my credentials are more than adequate." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. But it was then that Lady Alara's finger jabbed into his chest, breaking the brief silence. "Lady Alara Kvari, you don't even look at me with the respect I deserve." Another poke followed, harder this time, and Marcus could feel his patience beginning to fray. He counted to himself, holding his composure with every ounce of his will. "Lady Alara Kvari, do you think you can just ignore me?" Marcus exhaled deeply, his breath steady, but his temper simmering beneath the surface. He could feel the warmth of her finger pressing harder into his chest, pushing against the boundaries he had long set. His voice, when he spoke, was low and controlled. "Marcus Hill, I'm not here for entertainment. I'm here to keep you safe." Her finger lingered for a moment, before rising again, brushing lightly across his jawline, tracing the rough stubble on his face. Her golden eyes flickered with something akin to curiosity but also mockery. "Lady Alara Kvari, how primitive." The line had been crossed. In an instant, without thought, Marcus grabbed her wrist and pulled it toward his face. The space between them seemed to close, the tension mounting. The silence screaming in the back of his mind. Before she could react, he bit her finger, his teeth grazing her skin hard enough to make a point, but not enough to break the surface. The world seemed to freeze. For a long, agonizing moment, neither of them moved. The corridor, once filled with the hum of machinery and the distant chatter of personnel, had become eerily silent. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. Lady Alara's golden eyes widened in shock as she processed the unexpected action. "Lady Alara Kvari, shocked? What did you just do?" The intensity in her voice was palpable, and for the first time since the encounter began, she seemed genuinely shaken. Marcus let go of her wrist, but his gaze never wavered from hers. "Marcus Hill, showed you that humans have boundaries." The words were simple, but the weight of them hung in the air, unspoken challenges now shifting between them. For the first time, there was no arrogance in Lady Alara's demeanor, only surprise, and something else he couldn't quite place. As the scene unfolded, the silence in the docking bay felt suffocating. It was a delicate moment, the kind that could unravel or ignite a storm, but one thing was clear: this was not the beginning of a typical diplomatic mission. The conflict unfolds. Location: Proxima Station Command Center. The command center was a darkened space, illuminated only by the flickering lights of the station's active systems. It hummed with a low, almost mechanical heartbeat, as various crew members scurried around, their eyes fixed on the towering displays of holographic information. The air felt thick with urgency, every second stretching like it had been dipped in molasses. Marcus stormed in, his boots echoing sharply against the cold metal floors. His breath came in shallow, rapid gasps, still reeling from the earlier incident with Lady Alara. His mind raced as the metallic hum of the station mixed with the pounding of his heartbeat. Marcus Hill, his voice tense. Someone's trying to hack into our systems. The words cut through the thick atmosphere, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Lieutenant Parker, who had been glued to a console, turned, his face pale with concern. The gravity of the situation was not lost on him. Lieutenant Parker, glancing at the readouts, looks like they are mapping our defenses, scanning for weak points. Marcus's jaw clenched, his pulse quickening. His eyes darted across the room, searching for the answers that seemed to dance just beyond his reach. Every instinct told him this was no ordinary breach. This was a well-planned assault, a prelude to something far worse. Marcus Hill, commanding, find out who. Now. The words hung in the air like an order, cutting through the noise of the station's systems. The tension in the room heightened, every officer now moving with precision, fingers flying over controls. It was no longer just a breach, it was a threat that had come knocking at the heart of Proxima Station. The growing tension. Location, secure quarters. The dim, red glow of emergency lights painted the room in an eerie, surreal shade as Marcus and Lady Alara found themselves locked within the confines of a secure chamber. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of metal and static. Outside, the low hum of Proxima Station seemed distant, almost muffled, as though the station itself was holding its breath. The door, thick and reinforced, stood as the only boundary between them and the outside world, where danger still lingered, a constant, invisible threat. The communication systems had been jammed. Every attempt to contact the command center had met with failure, leaving them isolated in this sterile, cold space. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional beep of a nearby terminal, which flickered in and out of life. Marcus paced the room, his mind racing, still processing the chaos they had just survived. His fingers drummed against the hilt of his weapon, each movement tense, calculated, waiting for the next shoe to drop. His gaze darted toward Alara, standing near the far wall, her posture stiff and unyielding. But there was something different now, a subtle shift in the way she held herself. Her usual cold disdain had softened, replaced by something deeper, something less certain. Lady Alara Kvari, her voice low, almost reflective, you know, no one has ever challenged me like that. You bit me, Marcus. No one dares to do that. Her words hung in the air, charged with an energy that neither of them could ignore. The darkness of the room seemed to grow heavier, as though it too were listening, waiting for the next exchange. Marcus's gaze flicked to her, the intense golden of her eyes glimmering in the low light. There was a quiet vulnerability there, something he hadn't expected to find beneath her defiant exterior. Marcus Hill, his voice steady, but with a hint of humor, you were poking me? The words were simple, but in that moment, they seemed to carry the weight of something more. Alara's lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. It was something else, something unspoken, an invitation or perhaps a challenge. She moved closer, her eyes never leaving his. Lady Alara Kvari, her voice softer, almost teasing, perhaps it was a way to get your attention. You certainly responded. Her words lingered, like a delicate melody hanging in the air. The space between them felt charged, pulsing with something neither of them had anticipated. The heat of the moment, the unspoken understanding between them, crackled like an electric current, filling the room with a tension that was palpable, almost suffocating. They stood there for a moment, neither one speaking, yet both aware of the shift that had occurred. It wasn't just a danger they had survived. It was something deeper, something that had formed in the silence of the room, in the shared tension of their circumstances. The ultimate test. Location: cargo bay. The sounds of distant gunfire echoed down the metal corridors of Proxima Station, the heavy footsteps of the mercenaries still searching for them. The air in the cargo bay was thick with dust, particles swirling in the dim light that filtered through the grated ceiling. The cavernous room stretched out before them, the towering stacks of crates and cargo containers offering the perfect cover. Marcus and Alara crouched behind a stack of crates, their breaths shallow, their hearts pounding in their chests. They had no idea how many attackers were still out there, but they knew one thing: they couldn't afford to get caught. Marcus's eyes scanned the area, his mind working quickly. He was impressed by the way Alara moved, every step calculated, every motion precise. There was no hesitation in her actions. She was sharp, focused, as if the danger surrounding them was something she had faced before. Her gaze flicked to him, and for a brief moment, he saw something new in her eyes: respect. Not the cold disdain he had seen when they first met, but something else, something more real. Marcus Hill, his voice low, barely a whisper, "You're more than just an asset." Her golden eyes met his, the light glinting off their depths like twin suns. She didn't flinch at the words, didn't shy away. Instead, she gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, as though she had always known. "Lady Alara Kvari," her voice firm, a hint of defiance in it, "I'm not an asset, Marcus. I'm my own person." Her words cut through the air, sharp and final. There was no arrogance in them, just a quiet declaration of independence, of self-determination. For a moment, Marcus didn't know what to say. The woman standing beside him wasn't just the daughter of a powerful aristocrat. She was a fighter, a strategist, someone who knew the weight of the world she carried and still managed to stand tall beneath it. The sound of footsteps grew louder, closer. Marcus's grip on his weapon tightened, and Alara moved swiftly, silently, positioning herself for the next strike. They were a team now, their roles clear: survive together. A shadow passed across the room, and in a blur, Marcus fired. The first mercenary dropped to the ground with a muffled thud. Alara, fluid and precise, moved into position, firing off a series of shots that sent two more attackers tumbling to the floor. Her movements were a dance of deadly grace, and Marcus couldn't help but watch in awe. Lady Alara Kvari, after shooting a Mercadian attacker, not bad for an aristocrat. Marcus Hill, smiling despite himself, "I'm starting to like this." Their partnership, forged in the heat of battle, was seamless, born of necessity but growing into something more. Each movement was a reflection of their trust, their unspoken understanding. They were no longer just two people thrown together by circumstance, they were equals, in every sense of the word. As the final attacker fell, the room fell silent, save for their heavy breaths and the distant hum of the station's systems. They stood there, surrounded by the aftermath of their fight, the weight of the moment settling over them. For the first time, Marcus truly saw Alara not as a diplomatic figurehead or a powerful heir, but as a woman who had fought beside him and proved her worth. They had survived the breach. But what they hadn't anticipated was that the real battle, the one between them, was just beginning. The final confrontation. Location: secure conference room. The room was suffused with a quiet, almost oppressive tension as Marcus stepped inside the secure conference room. The walls, stark and devoid of decoration, echoed with the heavy footsteps of his arrival. The room itself was a study in minimalism, with smooth metal surfaces that reflected the cold, sterile light of the station. But it was the presence of Lord Tiberius Kvari that truly filled the room. Lord Tiberius Kvari stood at the center, a towering figure draped in elaborate robes that seemed to shimmer with the weight of ancient power. His crimson skin, darker and more weathered than his daughter's, was marked with the sharp lines of age and experience. His eyes, golden and piercing, locked onto Marcus with an intensity that could strip a person to their core. There was no softness in those eyes, just the steely resolve of someone who had commanded respect across 3-star systems. He exuded authority in a way that left little room for doubt. Lord Tiberius Kvari, his voice deep and steady, "You've proven yourself worthy of my daughter's respect, Commander Hill." Marcus stood at attention, the weight of the words sinking in. He had expected hostility, perhaps even dismissal. But this unexpected praise caught him off guard. It was rare for someone like Lord Tiberius Kvari to show approval, especially towards someone as insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy as a human security officer. The Kvari patriarch's eyes flicked to the side, as if assessing something beyond Marcus. The silence stretched, heavy and thick with unsaid words. Then, Lord Kvari took a step forward, his presence almost tangible in the quiet room. Lord Tiberius Kvari, his voice quieter, yet filled with meaning, "I trust you understand the nature of our culture. Strength is not just about power. It's about restraint." The words hung in the air, a challenge veiled in respect. Marcus's mind raced, trying to decipher the hidden meaning. To the Kvari, strength wasn't merely the ability to crush an enemy, it was the ability to hold back, to recognize when not to strike, to see the power in moderation. It was a lesson in control, one that transcended mere violence. Marcus Hill, his voice steady, though his mind churned, "I understand, sir." Lord Tiberius Kvari, nodding slightly. "Good. Then you may understand why I allow you to remain close to my daughter. You have proven that you can match her strength," and that he paused, his golden eyes narrowing with sharp precision, "is something few have ever been able to do." The weight of his words settled heavily on Marcus. This was more than just a diplomatic exchange, it was a subtle acknowledgement of their bond, one that had been tested in ways neither of them had anticipated. Lord Tiberius Kvari was not simply accepting Marcus as a protector for his daughter. He was recognizing something deeper, a potential for something more, something he could not ignore. With a final, thoughtful look, Lord Kvari turned, signaling the end of the conversation. "Lord Tiberius Kvari," his tone firm, "you have earned my respect, Commander. And that is no small thing." A new understanding. Location: Lady Alara's quarters. The door slid closed behind Marcus, and the soft hum of the station's systems enveloped them both. Alara stood by the viewport, her golden eyes staring out into the void, her fiery red hair cascading over her shoulders like a river of flame. The quiet between them was comfortable now, no longer strained or filled with unspoken tension. They had both weathered the storm, not just a literal one outside the station, but the emotional tempest that had swirled around them since their first encounter. The room was softly lit, the faint glow of the stars outside casting gentle shadows on the walls. Alara's quarters, once imposing with their grandeur, now felt intimate, the space shrinking with the shared silence. Lady Alara Kvari, her voice soft, thoughtful. What are you thinking about? Marcus took a slow breath, his gaze fixed on her silhouette against the backdrop of the stars. The weight of everything they had been through, the tension, the conflict, the battles both physical and emotional, had settled into a quiet understanding between them. He could no longer see her merely as the aristocratic heir to an empire. She was more. Much more. Marcus Hill, his voice reflective, almost distant. How sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most remarkable journeys. Alara turned, her golden eyes catching the light, a flicker of something both mischievous and genuine in their depths. Lady Alara Kvari, her tone teasing. So, you're glad you bit me? Marcus chuckled softly, the tension of the day breaking just a little. It was an odd question, one that still seemed surreal to him, but somehow fitting for their strange, unpredictable connection. Marcus Hill, his voice warm, with a hint of a smile. If that's what it took to get your attention, then yes. A smile tugged at Alara's lips, but it wasn't a smirk, it was something softer, more genuine. The fiery passion that had first defined their interactions now gave way to a quiet understanding, a mutual respect that hadn't existed before. In their shared journey through danger, through challenge, they had found something neither had expected, a deeper connection, one that was both fragile and unshakable. Alara moved toward him, her gaze never leaving his, and for the first time, the space between them felt entirely right. It was no longer about power or dominance, no longer about fighting for control. It was about something else, something far more complex and elusive. The world outside seemed distant now, irrelevant to the quiet moment they shared. The galaxy, with all its endless complexity and dangers, had faded into the background. All that mattered was the understanding between them, forged in the fires of conflict and solidified in the calm that followed. They stood there, two beings from different worlds, yet in that moment, they were more alike than either could have imagined. And somewhere, in the quiet expanse of space, they both knew that this was only the beginning. Thank you for joining us on this adventure through the stars. What do you think about humanity's place in this vast, unknown universe? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments. Your insights make this journey even more exciting. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories that'll keep you at the edge of your seat. Stay curious, stay bold, and remember, the galaxy is ours to conquer. Until next time, keep exploring with HFY Galactic Audiobooks. This introduction and outro aim to spark curiosity and encourage interaction with your audience, while setting the tone for the exciting content they can expect on your channel.